At 9:17 a.m., my company replaced my name on the org chart with a stranger's. No meeting, no warning. Just a restructure email, with my job rewritten into someone else's title. By 9:21, security was standing near my desk, like a suggestion. By 9:24, my access badge stopped working. And by 9:26, the CFO, who used to say I was the spine of the operation, sent me one line. Please exit quietly. We'll mail your belongings. So, I did. I walked past the glass walls, past the smiling interns, past the conference rooms where I built their best deals. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I didn't raise my voice. Because I already knew what they forgot. I wasn't just an employee. I was the only person who knew where their success was buried. And what happens when you dig it up? The lobby of Halcyon Ridge Capital always smelled like money pretending to be clean. Bleach disguised as citrus. Marble polished into obedience. A chandelier that didn't brighten the room so much as remind you who owned the light. I arrived at 8:43 a.m. Early enough that the receptionist still had her human face on before the day turned her into a checkpoint. "Morning, Elena," she said. My name in her mouth sounded normal. Like it belonged here. I nodded once. No wasted warmth. Halcyon taught us that warmth was a resource you couldn't expense. The elevator rose without noise. The numbers slid upward like a heartbeat on mute. My reflection stared back at me in the mirrored walls. Elena Ward, 34. Vice President, Strategic Partnerships. Hair pinned tight. Blazer, the color of wet stone. A face trained to show calm even when the ground moved. The doors opened on the 22nd floor. Everything looked the same. That was how Halcyon did violence. Quietly. In a room that still had the same furniture, I walked to my desk. My assistant, Maya, was already there. Eyes on her screen, shoulders too stiff, like she'd slept in armor. "You're early," I said. Maya didn't look up. "You have a busy day." Her voice had that careful softness people use around hospitals and funerals. I paused. "What's wrong?" Maya swallowed. Finally, she looked at me, and in her eyes I saw it. That look people get when they've been told something they're not allowed to tell you. The kind of look that says, "I'm sorry. I'm scared. And I'm going to survive this, even if you don't." "My calendar changed," she said. "My calendar changes every hour," I replied. "This one's different." She turned her monitor slightly, so I could see. My 9 a.m. meeting Q4 partnership roadmap. Elena, CFO, legal, was gone. Replaced by a block that read, 9 a.m. Internal. Org update. All hands required. "An all hands?" I asked. "On a Monday?" Maya's fingers worried the edge of a sticky note, like she could peel the truth out of it. "It was added at 8:12. "By who?" She hesitated. "Caleb." I felt the name like a thumb pressed into a bruise. Caleb Rusk, Chief Financial Officer. A man with a smile made of polished teeth and numbers. He used to call me indispensable. At Halcyon, that word meant, "I can't replace you yet." Yet. I set my bag down. Slow. Controlled. "Did he say why?" I asked. Maya's lips parted, then closed. She shook her head once. My phone buzzed. An email notification slid onto the screen like a blade. From People Operations. Subject: Organizational Alignment Update. I tapped it. The message was short, brutally efficient, like a memo written by someone who didn't want to hear your voice. Effective immediately. Halcyon Ridge Capital. We'll be implementing organizational changes to support our evolving business priorities. Elena Ward's position has been eliminated. We appreciate Elena's contributions and wish her the best in her future endeavors. Please direct all partnership inquiries to Sloan Kessler, Director of Strategic Partnerships. I read it twice. The second time, my brain tried to reject it like bad food. My position has been eliminated. Not "I am terminated." Not "we're letting you go." Just, the shape I occupied no longer existed. And then, the punchline. Sloan Kessler. Director. They didn't just remove me. They replaced me with a smaller title wearing my skin. Maya stood up too fast. "Elena." I held up a hand. I wasn't angry yet. Anger was loud. Anger made mistakes. Anger gave them something to write down. I breathed once. Then I asked, "Where is Caleb?" Maya's eyes flicked to the corner office. Glass walls, closed blinds. "He's in there," she whispered. "With legal." I nodded, like I'd expected it. Because I had. The thing about betrayal is you can always trace it backward. Someone stops making eye contact. Someone stops asking your opinion. Someone suddenly wants documentation. The signs were always there. But the truth is, I'd been too busy holding their empire up to notice the termites. I turned toward the glass corridor. And that's when my badge reader flashed red. Access denied. I tried again. Red. I stared at the small panel like it was a living thing that had decided to hate me. My badge, my proof of belonging, had been killed while I was still breathing. Behind me, chairs shifted. Keyboards paused. You could feel the floor listening. Maya's voice trembled. "Elena, don't." I didn't look back. I walked to the security desk at the end of the floor. The guard there was new. Younger. Too clean. He still believed rules were neutral. He watched me approach with the stiffness of someone who'd been warned. "Ma'am," he said. "Badge isn't working." I replied. He glanced at his tablet. His throat moved. I'm sorry. "I've been instructed." "Instructed by who?" He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I leaned slightly closer, not threatening, just undeniable. "Listen," I said quietly. "You will be in the middle of something that will outlast your job. Do you understand?" His eyes widened. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I just gave him the truth. He stepped aside. And I walked down the corridor like I still belonged to the building. Because for the last 5 years, I did. Caleb's office was a museum of curated dominance. A massive desk. No personal photos. Just a framed newspaper headline about a deal he'd led. And a small sculpture that looked like a man climbing over other men. His blinds were down, but not fully. Enough to pretend privacy. Not enough to stop rumors. I knocked once. No answer. I pushed the door open. Inside were 3 people. Caleb Rusk, seated behind his desk like a judge. Tara Lynn, general counsel, with her laptop open like a weapon. And Sloane Kessler, standing near the window, arms folded, wearing a crisp white blouse, and an expression that tried to be humble, but couldn't hide its hunger. Sloane turned first. Her eyes flicked over me, quick. Measuring, like she was checking the size of the body before the burial. Caleb leaned back. "Elena," he said, as if we'd scheduled this. "Tight morning?" I asked. Tara's face didn't change. Lawyers train their expressions the way soldiers train their aim. Caleb gave a small, practiced sigh. "I'm sure you've seen the email." "I have," I said. "It was charming." Sloane's lips twitched. Caleb folded his hands. "This is a business decision. We're streamlining." "You eliminated my position," I said, and then assigned my responsibilities to someone with a lower title. "It's a reorg." Tara cut in. Her voice was crisp. "Titles shift. Do they?" I asked. "Because it looks like my title shifted onto the floor." Caleb's smile tightened. "Elena, don't do this." "Do what?" I asked. "Notice?" Sloane cleared her throat softly, like she wanted to appear polite. Like she wasn't the knife, just the handle. I'm sorry," Sloane said. "I didn't know until this morning." I looked at her. I held her gaze long enough to see the lie settle. At Halcyon, nobody got promoted by surprise. They got promoted by planning. By dinners. By whispers. By documents drafted weeks before your career ended. Caleb tapped a folder on his desk. "Your severance package is generous," he said. 3 months, full benefits during the period, and a neutral reference. "A neutral reference," I repeated. "How kind of you to not poison me openly." Tara slid a paper toward me. "Sign, and we can expedite the payout." I didn't touch it. Instead, I asked, "Why?" Caleb's eyes cooled. "We need partners who can evolve with the firm," he said. "And there have been concerns." "Concerns," I echoed. That's a word people use when they're afraid of specifics. Tara's fingers paused on her keyboard. Caleb continued. "You've been difficult." I almost laughed. "I didn't," I said. If by difficult you mean I don't let you sell garbage and call it strategy, then yes, I'm difficult. Sloane's voice softened. Elena, no one is saying you're not talented. We're just, don't. I cut in. The word hit the room like a slap without movement. Sloane froze. Caleb narrowed his eyes. Watch your tone. My tone? I asked, quietly. You erased my job in an email at 8:12, and you want to discuss my tone. Caleb stood up. His height was meant to intimidate. His suit was meant to signal inevitability. He leaned forward slightly over the desk. We're done, he said. Security will escort you out. I didn't move. I looked at Tara. Is this legal? Cutting my access before a formal meeting? Tara didn't blink. We're within our rights. I looked back at Caleb. Is this personal? I asked. Caleb's smile returned, thin. Nothing here is personal. That was the most personal sentence he could say. I nodded once. Slow. Then I said, fine. Sloane's shoulders loosened slightly relief. Caleb's expression softened victory. They thought the story ended with my agreement. That's the problem with people who've never been on the losing side. They think silence means surrender. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. Caleb's eyes sharpened. What are you doing? I looked at him calmly. Checking my email. Tara's voice snapped. You are not to access company systems. I'm not, I said. My badge doesn't work. Remember? I tapped my screen. Then I slid the phone onto Caleb's desk so all three of them could see. On it was a calendar invite. 12:30 p.m. Lunch. Ridgeway Pension Trustees, hosted by Elena Ward. Sloane blinked. What is that? Caleb's jaw tightened. That meeting was moved. It wasn't, I said. Not by them. I let the silence stretch. Then I said it. Ridgeway Pension isn't your biggest investor because of your CFO. They're your biggest investor because of me. Caleb's face went still. Sloane's lips parted slightly. Tara's eyes narrowed. Finally interested. I continued. Calm as glass. For 2 years, I've managed that relationship. I built their trust. I wrote their reports. I handled their concerns. When your numbers didn't make sense, I made them make sense. Caleb's voice dropped. Elena, don't be dramatic. I'm not, I said. I'm being specific. I straightened. You're firing the person holding your most sensitive partners together. The same day you're meeting them. Tara's voice cut in sharply. Elena, that's confidential. I smiled for the first time. Not warmth. Just edge. You already removed my access, I said. I'm not on your team. Remember? Caleb's eyes hardened. Are you threatening us? I tilted my head slightly, like I was considering the word. Then I said, no. I leaned in. I'm telling you what happens when you remove a keystone and expect the arch to stay up. Caleb's hands tightened on the desk. Sloane spoke quickly, trying to patch the moment. Elena, we can talk about a transition. A handoff. You didn't want a handoff, I said, eyes on Caleb. You wanted a disappearance. Then I picked up my phone, and I said the sentence that changed the room. By the way, I scheduled Ridgeway at 12:30 because their chairman only trusts meetings when I'm in the invite. Caleb's voice went cold. Cancel it. I can't, I said. I'm not in your system anymore. Tara inhaled sharply. Caleb's face tightened, but he forced his voice to stay even. Then forward the details to Sloane. I looked at Sloane. She tried to look grateful. She tried to look professional, but in her eyes, I saw panic. Because she knew the truth. She wasn't ready to sit across from Ridgeway. She was ready to wear my title, not carry my weight. I turned back to Caleb. You asked me to exit quietly, I said. So I will. Caleb's eyes flicked to the guard outside the door, then back to me. Sign the severance, Tara said, voice sharp now. Or we'll make this difficult. I stepped back. I didn't sign. I didn't argue. I simply said, I'll have my attorney look it over. Caleb scoffed. You can't afford. I cut him off with a look. He stopped. Because in that second, he remembered something. He remembered the deals I'd closed, the enemies I'd handled, the rooms I'd dominated without raising my voice. He remembered that I didn't bluff. I turned to leave. Sloane spoke behind me, voice tight. Elena, don't do anything you'll regret. I stopped at the door. I didn't look back. I said softly, I don't regret things. I collect them. Then I walked out. The guard followed me at a respectful distance, close enough to threaten, far enough to pretend he wasn't. Desks blurred past. People stared, then looked away fast, like eye contact could be subpoenaed. Maya stood near my desk, hands clasped, face pale. Elena, she whispered. I picked up my bag, slowly. Controlled. My laptop was still there. My notebook, the one with actual numbers, actual names, actual patterns, was still in my drawer. I slid it into my bag with careful precision. Maya's voice trembled. What are you going to do? I looked at her. She was young, brilliant, trapped in the early stage where you still think loyalty will protect you. I wanted to tell her the truth, but the truth is expensive, and she wasn't ready to pay. So I said something simpler. I'm going to go home, I said. Maya blinked. Then her eyes filled with something: fear, admiration, grief. I leaned closer and lowered my voice. If anyone asks, I said. You didn't see anything. Her lips parted. Elena, I squeezed her hand once. Not comfort, not farewell. A transfer of pressure. Then I turned. And I walked. Past the glass walls. Past the conference rooms. Past the polished smiles. At the elevator, my phone buzzed again. A text. From an unknown number. Don't make this ugly. You'll lose. I stared at the message. Then I typed back. You already made it ugly. I'm just going to frame it. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. And as the doors closed, I saw my reflection again. Still calm, still intact. But something in my eyes had changed. Something quiet. Something final. Outside, the air was colder than it should have been. December in Manhattan always felt like a warning. I walked 2 blocks before I let myself stop. Not because I was weak, because I was smart enough to choose where to fall. I sat on a bench near a glass storefront that reflected the city back at itself. My phone buzzed. Another email. This time from Ridgway. Subject. Lunch today, confirmation. Elena, looking forward to seeing you at 12:30. We have concerns about the Q4 reporting and would like clarity. My throat tightened. Not fear. Focus. Because I knew exactly what those concerns were. There were numbers in Halcyon's quarterly report that didn't add up unless you used the kind of math that belonged in courtrooms. Caleb had been smoothing volatility. Creative accounting, he called it. I called it a fuse. And he'd just lit it. I stared at the email for a long time. Then I opened my notes. The notebook in my bag wasn't just a notebook. It was a map of every quiet compromise Halcyon had made. Every partner who'd been promised something. Every investor who'd been lied to with charm. Every risk buried under language like alignment and restructure. I had kept those notes because I believed in preparation, because I believed in leverage, because I had learned, the hard way, that in corporate America, being right wasn't enough. You had to be provably right. I inhaled once, then I made my first call. Not to a lawyer, not to a friend, not to HR. I called Ridgway's chairman directly. The number was in my phone because I'd earned it. It rang twice. A voice answered, older, controlled. This is Graham. Mr. Ridgway, I said. It's Elena Ward. A pause. Then, warmth. Elena, he said. Good. I was about to call you. I saw your email, I replied. We should talk. Yes, he said. The numbers. Before we talk about numbers, I said, I need to tell you something important. A silence. The kind of silence where power leans forward. What is it? He asked. I looked at the street. Cars. People rushing. Nobody knew my career had just been executed at 9:17 a.m. I kept my voice steady. I was terminated this morning, I said. Effective immediately. The line went quiet. Then, slowly, they fired you, he said, like he didn't understand the concept. Yes. Another pause. Then a question that landed like a hammer. Why? I didn't answer immediately. Because how do you explain to a man like Graham Ridgway that companies kill their most useful people for ego? You don't. You give him what he understands. Risk. Because I wouldn't sign off on something, I said. What thing? I stared at the cold glass of the storefront. And I chose my words with surgical care. I believe, I said, that Halcyon's Q4 reporting contains discrepancies that will matter to you. A long silence. Then, where are you right now? He asked. 2 blocks from Halcyon, I said. Come to my office, he said. Now. I blinked once. Mr. Ridgway. Now, Elena, he repeated. And forward me whatever you have. Immediately. I ended the call. My heart didn't race. My heart didn't panic. It simply locked in, because I knew what I'd just done. I had pulled the first domino out of their perfect line, and I wasn't going to put it back. Graham Ridgway's office didn't sit in a tower. It didn't need to. It occupied the top floor of a building that had stopped caring about impressing anyone a decade ago. Thick walls, dark wood, silence that felt earned. No glass. No skyline worship. No performative transparency. Just wait. The receptionist didn't ask my name. She already knew it. Mr. Ridgway is expecting you, she said, and opened the door herself. That was the first signal. Inside, Graham Ridgway stood by the window, not looking out, but reflecting. A man in his late 60s. Tall, shoulders still straight. Hair silver without apology. He turned when I entered. Elena Ward, he said, like a statement of fact. Sit. I did. No pleasantries. No apologies for Halcyon's behavior. Men like Graham didn't waste time on emotion. They outsourced it to consequences. He took his seat across from me, folded his hands once, and said, Start from the beginning. I opened my bag. Not dramatically. Not defensively. I placed my notebook on the table. Then my laptop. Then my phone. 3 objects. 3 weapons. They fired me at 9:17 a.m., I said. Cut my access before a formal meeting. Reassigned my responsibilities without a transition. Why? He asked again. I met his eyes. Because I wouldn't certify numbers I didn't trust. Graham leaned back slightly. Which numbers? I opened my notebook. I didn't slide it to him yet. I said, Before I answer that, I need to ask you something. His brow lifted a fraction. Go on. If I show you what I know, I said. What happens to me? Silence. Not discomfort. Calculation. Graham considered me the way men like him considered acquisitions, value, risk, fallout. Finally, he said, That depends on whether you're right. I nodded once. Fair. I turned the notebook toward him and opened to a page I'd marked months ago. Halcyon's Q4 report shows stable exposure in their infrastructure fund, I said. But 3 of the underlying assets are leveraged through shell vehicles that don't appear in the consolidated statement. Graham didn't react. He didn't interrupt. I continued. Those vehicles carry variable rate debt tied to assumptions that stopped being valid 6 weeks ago. I tapped the page. Your pension fund is exposed to that debt. Now his eyes sharpened. Why didn't this come up earlier? He asked. Because I fixed it, I said. Quietly. He studied me. You covered for them. I protected the partners, I corrected. There's a difference. And now? He asked. Now I don't work for them, I said. And those assumptions are about to collapse. Graham reached for the notebook. He read. Slowly. He didn't skim. He didn't rush. Every page he turned felt like a footstep toward something heavy. Finally, he closed it. You're saying they hid risk, he said. Yes. And you warned them. Yes. And they fired you. Yes. Another pause. Then, do you have proof? I opened my laptop. Pulled up a folder. Inside were emails. Drafts. Comments. Timestamps. Caleb's words. Tara's revisions. Language softened. Numbers reframed. Questions buried under. Alignment. Graham exhaled once through his nose. A sound like disappointment, aging into anger. This meeting at 12:30, he said. They still expect it to happen? They do, I replied. With someone else wearing my title. Graham stood. He walked to the window not to look out, but to think. Then he said something that shifted the air in the room. Cancel it. I blinked. Sir, I'll reschedule, he said. On my terms. He turned back to me. And you, he said, are not leaving this conversation unemployed. I didn't let hope show. Hope makes people sloppy. What are you proposing? I asked. Graham's mouth curved, not a smile, but something colder. I'm proposing that Halcyon explain itself, he said, and that you sit exactly where you are while they do. At 10:42 a.m., Caleb Rusk's phone started ringing. At 10:47, Tara Lynn received an email marked Urgent Investor Inquiry. At 10:53, Sloane Kessler realized she had been CC'd on a thread she didn't understand. She stood in the conference room, staring at the screen, pulse climbing. Caleb, she said, voice tight. Why is Ridgway asking for a revised breakdown of asset exposure? Caleb didn't answer. He was reading. Reading again. The color had drained from his face in stages. First confusion, then recognition, then fear. Tara, he said quietly. Did Elena send this? Tara scrolled fast. Too fast. No direct signature, she said. But the language? She stopped. Her jaw tightened. It's hers, she said. She knows. Caleb slammed his hand on the table once. She can't, he said. She doesn't work here. That's the problem, Tara replied. Sloane swallowed. What's happening? Caleb turned to her. For the first time since her promotion, he didn't look like a man in control. Elena went to Ridgway, he said. Sloane's stomach dropped. She wouldn't. She did, Tara cut in. And they're listening. Sloane's voice shook. What do we do? Caleb straightened his jacket. We contain, he said. We deny. We push this into legal review. Tara looked up sharply. We can't deny numbers we signed. Caleb snapped. Then we contextualize. Sloane whispered. And Elena? Caleb's eyes hardened. She thinks she's smart, he said. We remind her who bleeds first. My phone buzzed on the table in Graham's office. Unknown number. Graham glanced at it. Answer it, he said. I did. Elena. Caleb's voice came through, controlled, rehearsed. We need to talk. I don't work for you. I replied calmly. This doesn't have to escalate, he said. You're making a mistake. Graham leaned back, listening. I was erased in an email, I said. You don't get to call this an escalation. Think about your future, Caleb said. The industry is small. So is accountability, I replied. A pause. Then, his voice lowered. What do you want? I looked at Graham. He nodded once. I want the truth, I said. On record. Caleb laughed too fast. You won't win this. I don't need to win, I said. I just need to stop lying. The line went dead. Graham smiled faintly. That, he said, was not the sound of a man in control. At 11:18 a.m., Sloane Kessler sent an email she would regret for the rest of her career. She meant to send it to Tara. She CC'd Ridgway. In it, she wrote, We may need to revisit how Elena interpreted the data. She has always been emotionally invested in certain partnerships. Emotionally invested. The phrase sat there. Ugly. Revealing. Graham read it. Then he forwarded it to me. With one line. Interesting defense. I closed my eyes once. Not from pain. From clarity. Because Sloane hadn't just undermined me. She'd exposed the playbook. Discredit the woman. Question her stability. Blur competence into emotion. Old. Predictable. Lazy. And fatal. At 12:02 p.m., Graham stood. This will get messy, he said. Are you prepared for that? I thought of the lobby. The badge reader. The email at 8:12 a.m. Yes, I said. He nodded. Good, he said. Because silence ends today. He reached for his phone and made a call that Halcyon would feel before the day was over. At 12:27 p.m., Halcyon Ridge Capital sent out a meeting invite no one wanted to attend. Subject: Urgent Investor Alignment. Attendees: Executive Leadership, Legal, Finance. Location: Main Boardroom. Time: Now. People ran not visibly, but internally. Phones vibrated. Slack messages stopped mid-sentence. The building didn't change, but the air did. Caleb Rusk stood at the head of the boardroom table, jacket still on. Tie loosened just enough to signal pressure, not panic. Tara Lynn sat to his right, already drafting something she hoped wouldn't be read aloud. Sloane Kessler sat 2 seats down, hands folded in her lap, trying not to look like the youngest person in the room. The screen at the end of the room lit up. Graham Ridgway connected. No greeting. No small talk. Graham's voice filled the room like a verdict waiting to be delivered. Explain, he said. Caleb cleared his throat. Mr. Ridgway, we're happy to walk you through. I didn't ask for a walk, Graham cut in. I asked for an explanation. Silence. Tara leaned forward. There appears to be a misunderstanding regarding asset classification. Is it a misunderstanding? Graham interrupted. Or an omission? Tara's lips pressed together. Caleb jumped in. We've always been transparent with our partners. Graham's eyes flicked down to something off-screen. Then back up. Then why? He asked calmly. Did Elena Ward document concerns 6 weeks ago that were never disclosed to us? The room stiffened. Sloane's heart slammed against her ribs. Caleb forced a smile. Elena is no longer with the firm. She may be. I'm aware she's no longer with the firm, Graham said. You made that decision this morning. Caleb nodded, relieved. And yet, Graham continued, her documentation is more coherent than what you've provided me in the last 3 hours. That relief evaporated. Tara inhaled sharply. Sloane stared at the table. Graham leaned closer to his camera. You fired the one person who knew where your risk actually lived, he said. And you did it on the day I asked questions. Caleb's silence confirmed what his words could not deny. While Halcyon tried to hold the room together, I sat quietly in Graham's office. No screen. No speaker. Just me, watching them unravel without my presence. Graham glanced at me once. They don't know you're here, he said. They don't need to, I replied. He nodded. They're lying, he said. Yes, I said. But not well. On the screen, Caleb spoke too much. He referenced industry norms, temporary volatility, forward-looking adjustments. Every phrase, another shovel of dirt. Then, Tara made her mistake. If Elena had concerns, she said carefully, she should have escalated them through the appropriate channels. Graham's eyes sharpened. She did, he said. Repeatedly. Tara froze. I've read her emails, Graham continued. I've read your responses. A pause. Then, you chose language over truth. No one spoke. Because there is nothing to say when a lie is identified by someone who profits from truth. Sloane hadn't planned to speak. She wasn't ready. But fear has a way of pushing people forward. Elena was difficult, she said suddenly. She resisted alignment. Caleb shot her a look. Too late. Graham turned his gaze to her. Define difficult, he said. Sloane swallowed. She questioned leadership decisions. Graham nodded slowly. So do I. Sloane's mouth opened, then closed. And alignment, Graham continued, is not a substitute for accuracy. The words landed heavy. Sloane's voice cracked just enough to be heard. We had to move forward. With what? Graham asked. She didn't answer. Because she didn't know. She had inherited responsibility without understanding the structure beneath it. And now that structure was collapsing under her feet. At 1:06 p.m., something unexpected happened. A notification popped up on Tara's phone. Then Caleb's. Then everyone else's. A financial news alert. Breaking. Sources indicate investor scrutiny at Halcyon Ridge Capital over Q4, reporting discrepancies. The room went silent. Caleb's face drained of color. Who leaked this? He demanded. No one answered. Because no one had. The story didn't come from a person. It came from a pattern. Questions asked too publicly. Meetings rescheduled too abruptly. Language that changed tone overnight. Journalists didn't need names. They smelled hesitation. And hesitation meant blood. Graham watched them react. Then he turned to me. This is where most people panic, he said quietly. I nodded. Yes, I said. And panic makes them loud. Graham tapped the table once. The boardroom froze. Here is what will happen, he said. Halcyon will commission an independent review. Caleb started to object. Graham raised a hand. You will cooperate fully, he continued. Or Ridgway will withdraw. That word withdraw echoed. And, Graham added, Elena Ward will be compensated for wrongful termination and retained as an external advisor to the review. Caleb's head snapped up. That's unacceptable, he said. Graham's voice dropped. Then so is your capital. Silence. Because money doesn't argue. It leaves. The screen went dark. Graham ended the call. He turned to me. Are you willing? He asked. to walk back into that building? I didn't answer immediately. Because power is not about returning. It's about choosing how. I won't be an employee, I said. Good, he replied. You'll be untouchable. I stood, picked up my bag. As we walked toward the door, my phone buzzed. A message from Caleb. We need to talk. Now. I didn't reply. Because I had already spoken. When I re-entered Halcyon Ridge Capital at 1:34 p.m., no one stopped me. The badge reader didn't matter anymore. Eyes followed me down the corridor. Whispers started too late to stop. The boardroom door was closed. But they knew. They all knew. The woman they erased at 9:17 a.m. had returned by early afternoon. Not to beg. Not to reclaim. But to observe. Caleb Rusk waited in his office like a man waiting for a verdict he already knew. The blinds were half drawn now, not for privacy, but for protection. People hide when they're afraid of being seen thinking. When I knocked, he didn't tell me to come in. I opened the door anyway. He looked older than he had that morning. Not weaker, just thinner. Like confidence had weight, and some of it had been cut away. Elena, he said. Sit. I didn't. I stood across from his desk. Hands relaxed at my sides. I'm not here long, I said. Say what you need. His jaw tightened. You humiliated me, he said. I almost smiled. No, I replied. I corrected a record. He stood up slowly, palms on the desk. You went to Ridgeway, he said. You blindsided us. You blindsided me at 9:17 a.m., I replied. I just didn't wait until lunch. Silence. Then he said it, the thing men like him always say when power slips. You could have had more here. I tilted my head slightly. More what? I asked. Silence? Complicity? He exhaled hard. You don't understand how this works, he said. You made people nervous. I made liars nervous, I corrected. His eyes darkened. People like you don't last, he said. And people like you don't retire quietly, I replied. That landed. Because we both knew how this ended for men who mistook control for immunity. Caleb walked around the desk. Slower now. Less certain. We were going public next year, he said. We needed clean stories. I waited. And you, he continued. You asked questions that couldn't be smoothed. There it was. The truth. Finally undressed. You didn't fire me because I was wrong, I said. You fired me because I was precise. He didn't deny it. You had influence, he said. Partners listened to you. Investors trusted you. I nodded once. That made you dangerous, he finished. I leaned in slightly. No, I said softly. It made you exposed. His mouth opened, then closed. Because he knew it was true. Caleb returned to his chair. He looked tired now. Name your price, he said. I studied him. This was the moment most people waited for. The check. The apology. The illusion of victory. I don't want your money, I said. He blinked. Everyone wants money, he said. Not from people who confuse it with leverage, I replied. His voice sharpened. Then what do you want? I answered without hesitation. Your signature, I said. He frowned. On what? I pulled a folder from my bag. A document Graham's legal team had prepared in under an hour. An acknowledgement, I said. That my termination was improper. And that my concerns were documented. That would destroy me, he said. I met his eyes. You already did that, I said. I'm just writing it down. Silence. Heavy. Final. Caleb stared at the folder like it might bite. Then he asked the question he should have asked that morning. What happens if I don't? I smiled not kindly. Then Ridgeway withdraws, I said. And the review becomes public. He swallowed. Because he knew Graham didn't bluff. The door opened before Caleb could answer. Sloane stood there, pale, eyes too bright. Elena, she said quickly. Can we talk? I looked at Caleb. He nodded. I stepped into the hallway with her. She lowered her voice immediately. I didn't mean that email, she said. I was under pressure. You meant it, I replied calmly. You just didn't expect it to be read. Her face flushed. You don't understand, she said. I had to prove I belonged. I studied her. You already belonged, I said. You just chose the wrong way in. Her voice broke. What do you want from me? I answered honestly. Nothing, I said. You've already told me who you are. She reached out, then stopped herself. I'll fix this, she said. I'll support you. I shook my head once. You don't get to support truth, I said. You either tell it or get out of its way. She stood frozen as I turned back into Caleb's office. Caleb sat very still. The folder lay open now. The pen beside it looked heavier than it should have been. If I sign this, he said, there's no coming back. I nodded. That's usually what accountability feels like. He picked up the pen. His hand trembled, just once. Then he signed. The sound of ink on paper felt louder than it should have been. Final. I closed the folder. Put it back in my bag. Good choice, I said. He laughed bitterly. You think this is over? For me, I replied. It is. I left his office without looking back. In the hallway, conversations stopped. Doors closed softly. People watched the way people watch storms recede, grateful, shaken, alive. At the elevator, my phone buzzed. A message from Graham. Review initiated. Ridgway stands with you. Take the rest of the day. I stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection again. The same woman, but lighter. Not because I'd won, because I hadn't stayed. Outside, the city moved on. It always does. I walked without urgency, without triumph. Revenge would have been loud. This wasn't. This was something quieter. Something permanent. Power, I'd learned, isn't destroying the people who wrong you. It's leaving them with the truth, and no way to escape it. Buildings don't collapse the way movies show. They don't explode. They don't scream. They settle. 3 days after Elena Ward walked out of Halcyon Ridge Capital for the second and final time, the firm released a statement. Carefully worded. Legally padded. Emotionally hollow. Halcyon Ridge Capital is conducting an independent review of its recent financial disclosures to ensure continued alignment with our partners and stakeholders. Alignment. The same word they'd used to erase her. But this time, no one believed it. Because alignment doesn't happen when lawyers are billing by the hour. Caleb didn't lose his job immediately. That would have been merciful. Instead, he stayed. Through the review. Through the questions. Through the quiet meetings where people stopped laughing at his jokes. The board stopped asking for his opinion. Legal stopped ceasing him. Investors stopped returning his calls directly. Control doesn't vanish in a moment. It leaks. Week by week, authority slipped out of his hands and into documents, committees, processes designed to prevent exactly what he had been. When the review concluded, the findings were inconclusive. That word hurt more than guilty, because it meant this. They couldn't prove criminal intent, but they could prove judgment. Caleb was asked to step aside. Not fired. Repositioned. A title without gravity. A man who once moved markets now needed approval to move a meeting. And every time he signed something, he remembered signing Elena's acknowledgement first. Sloane thought survival meant distance. She stopped defending Caleb. Stopped replying too fast. Stopped volunteering opinions. She thought silence would make her invisible. It didn't. Because when the review asked who'd assumed Elena's responsibilities, her name appeared everywhere. Emails. Calendars. Decisions she didn't understand but approved anyway. No one accused her of malice. That was worse. They accused her of not knowing enough. Her promotion was quietly reversed. Role recalibration, HR called it. Sloane stayed but smaller. No longer hungry. Just careful. And every time she opened an email, she wondered if someone else was reading it too. Word travels fast when it's expensive. Firms didn't call Elena to ask what happened. They called to ask what she saw. Discreet lunches. Private meetings. Chairs pulled close. Men who once overlooked her now listened. Not because she demanded attention. Because she didn't need it. Her reputation moved ahead of her quiet, precise, dangerous, in the right way. She didn't brand herself a whistleblower. She didn't tell war stories. She simply said, I help institutions tell the truth before it costs them. And that was enough. 2 months later, Elena sat across from a woman named Margaret Hale, chair of a regulatory advisory council no one liked being investigated by. Margaret didn't waste time. We need someone, she said, who understands how lies hide in language. Elena smiled faintly. And you think that's me? Margaret nodded. You weren't loud, she said. You were accurate. Accuracy. The thing that had gotten her fired. The thing that had brought her here? I don't want power, Elena said. Margaret leaned back. Good. That means you won't abuse it. Elena accepted the role on one condition. She wouldn't be permanent. She would move. Observe. Correct. Leave. Structures didn't change from the inside unless someone refused to belong to them. One evening, Elena received an email she almost deleted. From Caleb Rusk. Subject. No subject. Just one line inside. I underestimated you. She stared at it for a long time. Then she closed the laptop. Some acknowledgments come too late to matter. Elena didn't build a firm. She didn't write a book. She didn't give speeches about empowerment. She did something quieter. She became the person companies called before things broke. Before emails became evidence. Before silence became guilt. Before power mistook itself for permanence. And when she left those rooms, she left behind something stronger than fear. She left clarity. Years later, someone asked her once, "Do you regret how it ended at Halcyon?" Elena thought of the badge reader. The email at 8:12 a.m. The silence after 9:17. She answered honestly. No, she said. That's when it began. Because revenge isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't destroy buildings. It teaches them they were never as solid as they believed. They erased her name in the morning. By nightfall, they were signing it back into history. Not as an employee, but as the consequence.